Next, we have a friend to help us think about what each of us bring to our communities. Dasan Ahanu is a cultural organizer with the North Carolina Climate Justice Collective and is a poet who served as the 2023 Piedmont Laureate. Please welcome to the stage, Dasan.
I am Vaughn, Doris, and Bethola's blessing, product of below the Mason-Dixon line in the south side of the city, with the luck of being given a test instead of Ritalin and the expectation of being labeled gifted instead of a nuisance. Shaped by Black exceptionalism, influenced by working class idealism, and raised by a Black woman's resolve, I stand for great speeches, beat drops, and my date's arrival. Hold true that we are the answer we have always needed. Believe that we are all deserving of joy. I am the well-mannered example that created his way dangerous. A fashionable laborer determined to show you how to work these hats better. A southern gentleman, part moonshine and pearl handle 38, a gallon jug of kerosene resolve, daring you to strike the match. Smart enough to rebel, beautifully rebellious enough to convince you to accept it. How y'all doing today? My name is Dasan Ahanu, and I am excited to be here today. This thing, Rooted in Community, is very, very important to me. I often say that I was raised in a working class family, but also raised in community by some amazing, amazing folks committed and dedicated to helping improve lives, change communities, and create impact. And community is something that has provided me the opportunity to accomplish all the things that I have, to be able to sustain myself and take care of my family. It's all community. And so for me to be able to talk about this topic, I was very excited. Now, I want to bring your attention to a handout that is on the table that I hope that over the course of this morning and today that you complete, and that I hope later today, when given the opportunity, some of you will share what you have done. I'm going to explain what this is. This is called a declaration of self. Now, for those of us who are a little older, what you will immediately recognize is that this is a Mad Lib. There are places where I say that and folks go, oh, what? And I'm like, okay, I know exactly where I am. But we remember the excitement of a Mad Lib. And what it is it asks you to fill in these blanks with a couple of things. 2 people who inspire you, 2 places that have helped impact you, 2 things that have helped shape you, 3 things that have helped shape you, to identify yourself, to talk about things that you stand for and believe in, things that you know, and things that you won't ever stop. And then it closes in a very particular way. It asks you to complete 3 I am statements. Now, the reason why I created this comes out of an activity that I use very often in a lot of different circumstances, but it was my students who really unlocked this for me. The first time that I did this activity, I was talking to a young men's mentorship group, and I was trying to figure out how we could start a conversation where I could get some information from the young boys that I was standing in front of, and asking them some questions and getting them to answer the questions for me seemed to work. I said, well, let me try this with my students. And I went to my students, and what I came to understand was something really impactful. What I told them was I was like, this is an opportunity for you to tell me who you are in your own voice. And I said, this is what this means. Because you have taken the time to participate in this, know for a fact, if I ever see you anywhere and I am watching anything that doesn't match up to how you have introduced yourself to me, know that I'm coming to have a conversation with you. And you will understand exactly why. But also know, if I hear anything that doesn't match to how you've introduced yourself to me, know that I am not going to believe that. I'm going to believe you. This is the agreement we have because you took the time to introduce me and tell me not only who you are, but why you are. And so this was an opportunity for me to be able to welcome my students into community with me. And we would begin to operate in the way that I know community, which is we are here for each other, of each other, and with each other. And so I want you to think about completing this activity. Fill this in, because it is an opportunity not only to be able to introduce or share this with someone today, but to carry this with you and remember that you walk into any space with everything that is on this page. And that the answers to this come from your experiences that have impacted you enough that when you think about the things that have shaped you, influenced you, make you move, the things that really matter to you, that you carry these things because something has impacted you, and it will not change unless something has impacted you as much or more. But here's the key about this in terms of thinking about community is, when we think about this, everyone that we are engaging with also comes into that same space with the same things. This is the way that we can come to build trust, because all of you know you can't do work unless you have established trust. There's a hesitation, because oftentimes we're seeking to help folks who have had people try to help before, but they did not understand community, and so the way that they helped left trauma instead of change. And in order to be able to move past that, you're going to have to prove to that person that you are not of the same. And the way to do that is to be able to introduce you, to know that you are coming with things and understanding a recognition, experiences, but also understanding that they are too. Some of these things are the way to be able to find out what that is. If there's tension, if there's a gap, it may not be because the person is in disagreement. You may be having the exact same conversation, but you are having it in two different ways. And the answer may be in the fact that the way that they think about these things and the way that you think about these things may be completely different, even though you're both talking about the same thing. In writing and in art, we call these abstractions. Things like love and joy and evil and success. We call them abstractions because they are made tangible by our experiences. We all know what love is, but each one of us has a different understanding of love based on the way that we have either had it, had not have it, or have stumbled through it. So when you're talking about love, we can assume that everyone in the room is having the same conversation, but if you actually take time to ask a couple of questions, you'll start to find out that everybody is coming from it from a totally different perspective. Y'all still with me? I'm Southern. There's going to be a lot of that. I'm surprised I waited this long before I asked you a question. They call joy reckless. They call joy reckless where dim asphalt and burdened shoulders comprise the first place of the city for God, a place where Mama's God and Uncle Lester's Jim Beam make the pain easier to forget, a place where smiles dance under street lights, where hallelujahs fill the pews beneath stained glass, where hope billboards the corner store, this place where heroes stand picturesque on cardboard stapled to popsicle sticks, airbrushed on the front of dulling t-shirts, this place that be over-patrolled, underfunded, and bastardized for the black and brown polymer used to weave resilience around here. This place cannot be erased. It cannot be bleached or bloodied less than. It cannot be demonized or stigmatized into disappearing. This place is ours. It is where we have raised families, held hope, and lifted our spirits. It is where we have dug in, paid bills, gotten over the hump, and shown the world that we are here for a reason. This place will always smell like grease and freedom. It will always sound like a joyful noise. It will always taste like the right word at the right time. It will always feel like the place we need to be. It will always be home. So when I think about community, there's a particular kind of thing that I want to leave you with today. And I know that we've all seen and experienced this. So what I want to do as a visualization is I want us to all recognize there's a circle right here. Everybody see this, a circle? Cool. Now, many times what we tend to see, oftentimes when the idea of community comes up, I found myself in situations in working with organizations. As an artist, I try to take my experience as an artist, all the communities that I've had an opportunity to be a part of, into rooms with leaders and organizations that help them understand how to think a little differently and more equitably about the way that they're engaging in community, especially when they're trying to reach particular communities that are distressed, that have had some challenges, that have had some obstacles, have had people there before and things didn't possibly work out. What I found is that there are a lot of folks who are community focused, which means that when we think about community, right, community is centered, but community is at the disposal of the way that they think about community. When we community focus, is that we have our attention focused on community. We understand that community is important. We understand that community is necessary. We understand that community needs to be taken care of. And so we think about how we can operate and how we can serve the community. That is being community focused. Here's the thing. There's nothing inherent in that that says that the community has a voice or a place in how they're being focused on. It can happen, but there's nothing inherent in that way of thinking. But if you'll notice, community is still centered. So it's a beautiful thing because community still is at the center of the way that the work is done and the thoughts are. Now, I also find myself seeing moments where folks are community present, which is where they recognize that they are a part of a community, they exist in the community, they have to take into consideration the community that they are part of whenever they are working, whenever they're moving, whenever they're operating, and once again, community is centered. But here's the thing, there's nothing inherent in being community present that says that the community has a voice in how you are present. It can happen, but there's nothing inherent in how that relationship comes. I believe in a reciprocal relationship, which is where the things that you do are influenced by the fact that you are open to hearing back about how those things that you do have impact. Here's the thing that I love to think about is I love to be thinking about being community minded. That is where you recognize that you are of a community, that you are in a community and of service to a community, so that that influences everything that you do. Is everybody with me? Here's the reason why. And here's the reason why I offered this declaration of self-activity. When you come into work, you are coming from a community. When you are at work, you are working in community. And your work is in service to a community. You are of, in, and in service to a community. All of that matters. Otherwise, where they're going to be are there going to be gaps. They're going to be gaps. They're going to be missteps. They're going to be disconnects. Because, as we can see in this activity, all of that comes with things. And all of those things have an impact on the solutions we're trying to put in place. And we have to recognize that we are sometimes working with and at odds with folks who are operating from the same place. Many of the reasons why they're so rigid in their position is that they are of a community, operating in a community, and in service to a community, and they have a particular perspective about why. We don't need to get into the depths of what these communities are, what their ideologies or beliefs. We don't need to get into that. We just need to recognize that it exists. And here's the thing that brought my attention to this. There's a couple of things. One is working in community organizations. One is working in corporate and having this be a struggle. Because where I see this kind of get a little wild is that there are teams that are great in community with each other, but haven't bothered to consider that you brought a team together from very different places, and maybe if you open up and offer room for that, that it may help you deepen the work that you're doing in the communities that you're serving. We also have folks that come and bring all of this wealth of understanding, but then there's some tensions internally in terms of the team and this operation. And then I go in, we do some training, and it comes to realize that part of that is because we've never taken into consideration that we are operating in community. And if we use our sense of community in thinking about how we operate as a team, then all of a sudden the dynamic changes. And then, of course, there is the operation of being in service to a community. And the one thing that I've learned over my time is that we cannot be prescriptive. We have to be collaborative. And that requires us to have an understanding of the community that we're serving, because if we're prescriptive, what we may be looking at may not seem the same to the people that we're trying to serve. I've seen great stumbles with folks. I remember sitting in a training one time, and I was there, and they were teaching field organizers that the language that they were using to describe the circumstances of the community that they were serving around poverty and economic disparity did not match the way that they thought about themselves. And so all of the materials and everything that they did, and whenever they showed up, they were met with tension and aggression and dismissal. And they ultimately realized is that the way that they framed it from an observer's point of view was not the lived reality of the folks who were going through it. I sat there and said, well, I know that, because those are the communities that show up to my workshops, step on stages, share poems. They speak very loudly about the way that they see their circumstance. The thing is they also speak very loudly about how nobody gives them the agency to speak of their own circumstances without it being tragic. This is what being rooted in community is about. It's about self-determination and agency, yours and theirs. And the fact that operating in a place that allows for everyone to have it leads to a very beautiful outcome. But it also empowers folks to be able to kind of gain the understanding of how to advocate for themselves, so you leave a beautiful, lasting impact after. Everybody still with me? One of the last things I want to say is that there's a wonderful thing. Social movements have been one of the most powerful forces for change in modern history. And in that, there's this cultural anthropologist, David F. Alborough, who has this book called In the Peyote Religion Among the Navajo. And what I took out of this was the way that he talks about radical transformation, which I know when we're talking about hunger and child hunger, what we're looking for is we want radical change, we want radical transformation, we want things to be different. And I am of the mindset that when I am in spaces with change makers, I want to make sure we understand that we will win. There is no doubt. There is no other way to think about it. We are going to win. The change will happen, and folks will be able to have what they need. And in that, I like to think, I consider that to be a radical imagining, right, that we cannot let go of, because our vision informs our action. If we maintain our eyes on the goal and on the prize, then we will continue to take steps there. And whether we see it in our lifetime or not, what we can know and what we can believe in is we will win, it will be achieved. And with that, what he talks about is that there are the idea of what is redemptive and revolutionary change that leads to radical transformation. Now, there's also limited change, which is alternative and reform. And this is what blew my mind. I said, ooh, I've heard people talk about alternatives and reformation, but he said that change is redemptive and revolutionary. That redemptive is at the individual level and revolutionary is at the group level. The idea that if we are impacting the individual, that we would inherently impact the group. And I said, well, ain't that a community right there? Right? And it leads back to that idea of the declaration of self, because when we show up authentically, when we show up sincerely, when we show up with care and consideration, what we do is we create the space for others to do the same. And inherently, what comes out of that will inherently impact the whole. And we can gain steps towards the win by impacting that idea of that each one teach one, and if I can infect one, that is not just a novel idea and a thing to inspire us and motivate us. It is real, because over time, we are literally planting the seeds that lead to transformation. And then when you're so immersed in the work, sometimes it doesn't feel like that, but we got to think about community. We got to think about community. Those of us who grew up in particular neighborhoods and knew folks who were there for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, they've seen everything. They've seen everything, right? But when we talk to them, we love their perspective, because not only have they seen everything, but having seen everything doesn't change the idea that they are still open to the idea that there's still more change to come. That is the recognition that the folks over there may not be here next year. The folks down the street, that store, that used to be a school, that wasn't a shopping center, but this neighborhood, this community is still what it is, and it still will be what it is, and it will continue to be that as long as we recognize that we are of a thing that is important and matters. Y'all are of a thing that is important and matters. Because you are of a thing that is important and matters, you are doing mattering work with people who believe in it, and you are serving folks who need that opportunity for you to do this work, and who will be lifted up, empowered, and they will be models for how this work can transform and change. And not only that, some of those folks will sit in the same very seat you are because you did it, and they know they can too, and they know how they were impacted, and they will continue this work on. This is how we will win. In community, of community, and in service to community. I thank you for allowing me to be here. Please, 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 please complete that. Keep that, take it with you, and know that the way that we get this done is by remembering that we will always win if we stay rooted in community. Thank y'all so much.
Wow. Thank you, Dasan. Thank you.